Welcome back to TTC. We bought the all-new, well, it's Milwaukee's first, really, turbo fan duster, their O887-20. Now, they certainly have leaf blowers, full-size bazooka-looking guys, but this is their first entry into the more pistol-sized tools that we feel aren't so much targeted at these smaller leaf blower things, but at a growing trend of rechargeable turbo fan duster tools that are replacing canned air for a lot of tasks and even compressed air in some cases, where you don't have a compressor or don't want to wait for one to start and pump up. And of course, aimed at the Makita model, who at least in the tool brand space has been dominating this for a little while now. So today we test it using some new instruments to try to tackle its sky-high claims of 570 miles per hour airspeed, compared against that Makita and against a new entry from the current top spot placed Wolfbox on our leaderboard, as we bought their also all new MF200, a magazine style battery swappable model with of course new higher specs as well. So we're going to see who can come out on top on our 20 plus model long list of rankings today. This is the 0887 and we paid $179 for it. How that's possible, I'm not quite sure. Yeah, I believe a full-size M18 leaf blower at our Home Depot are going for less than that bare, and this is a bare tool. And that's also somehow more than the Makita duster that we bought at $168 that was already feeling like that was pretty up there. But it should have more over that Makita than just price. If you listen to the box verbiage, the Makita is advertised at 447 miles per hour airspeed, and this new one, this M18, 570 miles per hour. Yeah. Think of like Cat 5 Hurricane, then multiply that by 3.5 times. That's this, according to Milwaukee. It does have, and I can confirm this just unpacking this, some pretty sweet little tidbits in design. This filter that's easily removable off the back to keep dust, or probably more often sawdust, and even small children and pets, if you consider the specs this is touting, from getting sucked into the tool and also from blowing that dust or sawdust back out onto whatever workpiece or area you're trying to clear. The attachments are all half twist lock, sort of a medium durometer rubber material. It's not too soft, but not super stiff either. And they store in this little caddy that's also magnetic. I think that's pretty cool, whether it's for the side of a toolbox or something steel just on the job site. It's not exactly quiet, but neither are many of the tools we're going to be comparing it to on the sound level coming up. First, though, we want to take a look at air force or pressure at speed. This is measured in grams on this scale, which unless you have this same exact scale and live at the same altitude and current temperature as now, isn't the best to compare to at home, but is great to compare against other models you have in one place. The Makita, which made the most to date, made 250 grams, large diameter fan inside, powerful motor, small exit diameter, high speeds make for a lot of force, and the Milwaukee has 3 modes, and then in high, it steps that up to 262, about 260-ish grams. With the filter removed, I know I was curious about seeing this one, I'm sure you are too. That's still, surprisingly, 260 to 262 grams. You just move this tool up and down to find its peak spread and what it likes to register the highest. That's pretty impressive, making a filter to filter out dust and debris, but not really affect its performance. Would not have called that one. And also, this is all with a 2 amp hour battery. No doubt you guys want to see what difference, if there is one, going to be on a, for example, 6 amp hour forge. And that's going to be also, yeah, about 260 grams. Again, these are all good things, being able to get the same performance either way with the filter without expensive battery, cheap, small battery, large battery, though it will draw down that small battery right quick, so be warned. This sort of package is more ideal though, and this is a chonker even with this small battery on it when you compare it to common duster options these days, like these things. We feel an M12 version of this tool would be even more popular if able to get anywhere close in performance, because these small tools seem to make a lot of this possible with small batteries inside. Case in point, I mean, maybe we'll see today, this new Wolfbox MF200 we bought for $100. These are like 100, 115 or so, but new introduced at $100. No affiliation with Wolfbox, but their MF100 model has been practically unbeaten on the top of our rankings. So when we heard this was coming out, we purchased one as soon as we could to compare it to this Milwaukee. This is also bigger than the Gen 1 Wolfbox, though not by much, mainly where it matters, which is fan blade and motor size in the head. and this base, which is now flat. The bottom hoop on the MF100 model is sort of cool looking, but not very practical. You can now, with the Gen 2s, set it down. And it's also, of course, hiding a new magazine-fed style hot swappable battery. Sure, you need to buy one of their additional batteries to swap in a different pack, just like you would need to buy an M18 battery, I suppose, to do the same. But this model is around $100 with battery and a way to charge it instead of $179 bare. So if you go through batteries, like to use these tools in high only, use it a lot, it does beat the 2-hour charge time to swap another one in, though this battery does charge at 2.5 amps USB-C, which is pretty good for the combined 6,000 milliamp hour battery inside, or well, measuring the voltage off of this, it's like 8 volts, so more like a 3 amp hour 8 volt battery effectively. It's still a press and hold trigger button to use when it's in high. You have to hold it down, I guess, so it doesn't fly off. But the M18 trigger and locked on position situation is definitely better overall. This M18 though, and this new MF200 are some of the only dusters I've seen, well felt, that make the air hot to the touch, as in it's sucking in, compressing, and shooting out air at such a speed that despite the amount of volume of air going through it that you would think would be cooling it down, it heats it in the process. It's doing so much. The new Wolfbox has a larger in-size fan, and that's going to help it increase the air, like force here, to 180, 181 grams, up from the 159 of the standard model. Nowhere near the size of the M18's internals, but all told still up there comparing against all the 20 that we have purchased. The new model, in fact, is supposed to be better all around at basically everything except RPM, which is missing from the entire sell page of this thing. Doesn't list RPM anywhere, not that it really matters. I feel we've shown it's irrelevant outside of being a cool stat, something for them to put in titles that catch your eyes. So either this brand learned this fact and matured as a company, or this new model with this larger diameter fan that usually spells, yep, lower RPM despite more performance in every other way. We're assuming seeing 109, 110,000 RPM down from 125,000 RPM as measured, which is still way up there and again doesn't mean a whole lot. On the Milwaukee, who knows on this model, it's got screws, it's got lots of them, and they all come out, removed all of them. Then when you take this rather nice steel grate enclosure off, there's some more screws and screws on the front nozzle, but nothing comes apart. Even the board is through soldered in place. I think because it creates a positive pressure, it's all glued together as a unit to not leak air and add to extra noise. But she must be hiding something expensive inside, as it's very bare bones inside the tool otherwise. Beyond RPM, there are things that do matter to these tools in the stats, like CFM or air volume and airspeed. To do that, we normally use our pitot tube and meter here, and well, we can still do that for CFM on the Wolfbox, in fact. Since it has this large format wide opening, it isn't too high in airspeed, and we can measure its best CFM effort normally, and that in fact is a record on the channel, around 81 CFM, the higher amount of air volume of anything handheld like this we've tested to date. It does seem like an upgraded model, not just a new battery design. For the Milwaukee, even for CFM, its wide open nozzle is just about half of an inch, just over half of an inch, which means its airspeed is still super up there. It's mega. Too much for this instrument, in fact, to even get air volume due to its air velocity range. To go beyond 200 or well beyond 200 miles per hour, like we're going to need to be doing, we purchased this S-type pitot tube from England, and what's special for us about this is it has an exceptionally low constant factor, or K factor, so that when we plug this tube into our meter that's expecting the original one and measure across these two openings at a specific new distance, we can trick the meter into displaying artificially low but consistent and repeatable numbers, and those numbers in this case being PA or pascals, which we'll need to convert using a conversion factor based on this new setup into miles per hour for you folks, which is all a fancy way of saying we tricked the meter to increase our max range by giving it lower yet precise inputs. We can also check and dial in that conversion here by using past dusters. For example, this Gen 1 Wolfbox we have down as 200 miles per hour airspeed as tested with this nozzle, and our conversion factor says 2500 PA should be about 200 miles per hour. So far it's looking pretty good. you have to move it around to find the peak pressure zone of what's coming out of the tool. Keep in mind, that's not a linear scaling relationship. For example, 250 miles per hour would be all the way up to 3900 PA on this setup with our parts and current elevation. That's enough about how this is the why to measure some super speedy air speeds. The Gen 2 Wolfbox doesn't make 2500 like the Gen 1, it makes more. With a new meter and standardized distance, that makes, we'll call this 2825 PA, which makes for 213 miles per hour, nearly a record, passing up the Gen 1 in the MeLift tool, that tool battery version of these things. And it's just being edged out here by the Makita, which, yeah, spoiler, doesn't make 447 miles per hour as far as we can tell, 220. Not shabby considering the CFM it puts out, like the volume of the air it's pushing. The Milwaukee, using the same setup and distance layout, makes at, well, around, we'll call this 3150 PA or 224 miles per hour, and that's without a nozzle. That's just wide open out of the box. And that also doesn't improve with any other battery we have. With the nozzle on, it scores best with the one they picture on the tool. We're gonna see 4,000, 4,100, 4,200, 4,300, jumps around there. We'll call that 4,300 PA or 262 miles per hour. Definitely a record. Like in the realm of these tools, that's by a lot too. Is it 570 miles per hour as far as we can tell, or at least as far as we can reliably measure? Unlikely, as we're even correcting for the distance difference here from the tool to the meter with the new setup. What's more likely is Milwaukee has one of these, like a Makita, and figured their new tool is like 20 to 25% faster airspeed than that, based on what they got measurements from. But they also found that the Makita's not shooting out air at 447 miles per hour like they say. So they could either list 265, maybe even 270 miles per hour airspeed on their new tool, and by comparison look weak, or multiply Makita's numbers by 125% to give prospective buyers a realistic comparison or specs. But at the same time, live in a la-la land of fanciful specs where nut busting and lumens now all live. CFM though, it performs best without a nozzle, and this also can be deduced from pascals of pressure once you enter in the exit hole diameter into the equation. The Milwaukee puts out 34 CFM of air volume, like the amount of air pressure being pushed out. Not a whole lot really, though close to the 39 that they advertise. These tools, the MeLift, Makita, and now Milwaukee, are not so focused on blowing around a lot of leaves or a wide area, more like pulverizing anything you pointed at and doing so even from a distance. That distance, when held in your hand to your ears, is going to unavoidably always be at arm's length, so sound level, decibels, yeah, it's a factor. The Milwaukee is from the standard of 1 meter away on the low end, or by the numbers across everything we've bought, the middle of the pack in decibels. And that goes up noticeably if you take the back filter off, which is pretty awesome that it does just about as well in all of our testing that we did today, with or without it, and usually regardless of battery as well. So its scores today will certainly be best all around using with the filter, which, by the way, seem to be about $20 if you want to replace it. The Gen 2 Wolfbox measures and sounds noticeably higher. I wouldn't say like a deal-breaking amount, but it is there. Those who don't like the Gen 1's noise level would definitely prefer the M18 in this instance. If using it in an enclosed area, it's certainly more noticeable pitch-wise. That increased airflow doesn't come for free. Both of these tools go about the same goal, shoving a lot of air out rapidly, about as differently as it gets. Price-wise, family of products that its battery supports versus not, airspeed versus volume. Well, it's all here, and this is how all the tools on this list re-rank with these new entries, many of which are new high scores for the new tools here, shuffling all these others down in the ranking per each test. So this works out to an average ranking for each of these two, lower being best, as 3.6 and 3.8, with the Gen 2 MF200 on top, just by a sliver, about as small a gap as mathematically possible in this many fields. The tool battery style dusters don't get scored based on included battery size because they don't include a battery. Hopefully you own one of those already, which makes it less clean of a comparison here. But these are also much smaller and in this case cheaper, which we're not ranking for, so it sort of does balance out. These tools now sitting both at the top Well, the Gen 1 Wolfbox as well, I think, fit into two bins in general. The Milwaukee has range and what you'd consider or experience as power, air velocity, and force. It's not going to clear a wide area of debris, dirt, and sawdust unless you whip it around a lot. But if that sawdust is caked in there hard in your miter saw or something, or damp from wet lumber being cut up, this is going to dislodge all that in a hurry, more comparable to a compressed air blowgun than anything else yet. The MF200 will instead dust off an entire workbench or finish cleaning up that miter saw stand sooner, with how much area it can cover when you want it to, yet is still as punchy close up as anything else this size in the market, full stop. Its size lends itself to more precise feeling tasks like maybe a computer, and it can fit inside more things, think like sandblast cabinet filters that the M18 can't. The Milwaukee includes a lot of cool factor in the form of its add-ons like this filter and attachments, magnetic holder, better trigger and switches, while the cool factor from the Wolfbox comes from something this size wanting to spring from your hand when you put it into its max setting. And the new battery action just being pretty trick, and this falls closer to cool gadget prices than this is a tool that will need to earn its money back and save me time on the job, like where the Milwaukee sits. A theoretical like $120 M12 version that gets 80% of the way there to this M18 I think would take the cake for me, but until then, these two definitely sit atop the rest. Appreciate you joining us for this one. We make episodes every week. If you're the subscribing type, give it a whirl. If not, see you around sometime. Thanks for watching.